Hey everybody, thank you for joining me for another episode of Total Ramblings. This is a Doctor Who episode. I have literally just finished watching the Doctor Who episode Wish World, which is episode 7 of this current series, and the first of a two-parter. This is the penultimate episode from this series. Before I get into any detail, there's going to be some massive spoilers here because I'm talking through the entire plot. So you have been warned. If you haven't seen this episode or if you don't want to be spoiled by the contents of this episode, go and watch it first and then come back to me. Wow. I was not expecting this. I deliberately avoid spoilers for Doctor Who. It's not really a problem if I bump into them, but I don't go looking for them. And I had no idea what was going to happen in this story. I don't know if it was released online. All I know is that it hinges around today, which is Saturday, May the 24th, 2025. This is the latest DWM, which arrived a day or two ago. It had a nice book with it. The Wheel in Space. There you go. I've got the original print of this, but nice to have another copy. Anyway, so today is that date. It's about 5 minutes to 11, and I've just finished watching the episode on iPlayer. So we start off in Bavaria in 1865, and we're following a hooded female figure on a horse. Now, I will confess, my first thought was, is this the character Me? And my heart sank a little bit because I didn't like the character Me. Very underdeveloped, very poorly acted, in my opinion. Something of nothing, really. But no, it's the Rani, of course. Of course it's the Rani. And she is attending the birth of a child. And they're expecting the husband and the wife are expecting a midwife, but no, it's the Rani, and it turns out that this man is the 7th son of a 7th son, and she is attending the birth of his 7th son. And basically, she has clearly been awaiting this birth, and the Rani, it seems, has the power to change people. She changes the mother, whose name is Violette, into violets. She turns the children into ducks, and she turns the father into owls. Apparently just with her breath. We know that the Rani can sort of convert people, like she turned a guy into a tree at one point. But this is a bit, witchcraft, they say it is. She says, it's much older than that. So anyway, whatever. Let's move beyond this point. We're now in London in 2025 in a sort of 1950s, early 1960s kind of vibe to it. And the Doctor and Belinda are in bed together as a married couple. And who is on the TV? It's Conrad Clark. Conrad, who I so want to punch in the face from the previous episode. And basically turns out he's on the telly all the time. And he's basically saying there's going to be lovely weather all around the world and everything's going to be perfect. And we crash into the opening credits. Conrad, it seems, is known as Uncle Conrad or Uncle Connie. And like I say, he's on the telly all the time. And in today's broadcast, he starts reading a book. It's clearly in the style of the original Harry Potter print run of books. This book is written by I.M. Foreman, which is, the name of the owner of the scrapyard, the junkyard in the first episode of Doctor Who. And the book he's reading is called Doctor Who and the Deadly Wish. So, yet again, in this series, we have an external media reference to Doctor Who. So we've had Doctor Who as a TV series within Doctor Who with the Doctor Who logo. And now we've got Doctor Who being called Doctor Who in a Doctor Who book. basically, it turns out that tomorrow in this episode is May 24th. So, in other words, this episode happened yesterday. And it's May Day, public holiday. May Day is not May the 24th, it's May the 1st. So, clearly, this is not our reality. Like I say, they're in a sort of 1950s kind of house, and the Doctor and Belinda have a child, Poppy, and at one point she kind of screams no when they try and sort of tell her something, and a mug falls on the floor, a bright yellow mug, and they sweep up the mug, and the Doctor goes and gets a replacement from a cupboard rammed full of bright yellow mugs. Anyway, the Doctor's about to go to work in his pinstripe suit and his bowler hat, like I say, all very sort of 1950s. And Ruby's at the door. And she says, "Are you called the Doctor?" He says, "No, my name's John Smith." John Smith, of course, being a name that the Doctor has gone by, I think, since at least Jon Pertwee, possibly Patrick Troughton. Dr. John Smith was kind of the name. I think it was Pertwee, actually. Anyway, basically, Ruby is kind of confused because she thinks she knows the Doctor, and Belinda makes a phone call and says, somebody here is expressing doubt. Mel Bush is the Doctor's neighbour, living on the same street. And we see that all the houses out the front have got orange wheelie bins with the word slips written on them. And we can see that Mel is putting some rubbish in one of these bins, and when we look inside the bin, it's full of broken yellow mugs, like the Doctor's broken yellow mug that they just swept up. And also, by the way, there are gigantic dinosaur skeletons prowling around the city. And sitting over the centre of the city is a gigantic skeleton-like spider, which we later know is called the Bone Palace, sitting over the city with a sort of centre spire kind of coming down into the sort of above the city. And we see that everywhere we go, Conrad is reading out this Doctor Who story on the screens, and all we can hear is his voice. And there are big, massive posters on the wall with Conrad's face. One of the slogans is, "When in doubt, don't." Basically, you're not allowed to doubt things. Anyway, the Doctor gets to work in this perfect world, and Kate Lethbridge-Stewart is running the unit office, although it's very old-fashioned, sort of early 20th century wooden, with massive typewriters. There are other unit personnel in the office, and unit in this fantasy land is called the Unified National Insurance Team. Speaking as somebody who's been in insurance for 34 years, I guess, yay, insurance finally gets a call out. Anyway, the Doctor's sort of chatting with Kate Lethbridge-Stewart's crush in our world, and kind of says, "You're a beautiful man," to which he objects because, you're not allowed to express views that aren't sort of the standard kind of accepted viewpoint, and this is regarded as a slip. Meanwhile, with Belinda at home with Poppy, her mum and grandma turn up, and as they discuss things, it becomes apparent that Belinda doesn't really have any memories of when Poppy was born, how old she is, how long, and this is all very strange. And Belinda, kind of under the pressure of all this, runs out into the field and the forest and just kind of screams because she's clearly having doubts herself. And all the while, we keep getting flashbacks to big screens of Conrad, who I want to punch in the face, telling this Doctor Who story. Back at the Doctor's work, the Rani arrives on some sort of hover bike. I was kind of reminded of the 1980 film Flash Gordon on Flash's sort of jet cycle or whatever it's called, and everyone's kind of like, "Oh, isn't she amazing?" And the Doctor says, "I wonder who she is," and everyone looks at the Doctor. You wonder. And the Doctor's kind of, they're sort of questioning him, and the Doctor's like No, I'm not really wondering. And clearly, you're not allowed to have free thought in this world. Anyway, the Rani, it's confusing because we've got two Ranis, right? I'm just going to call the new one the Rani and the old one Mrs. Flood, even though they are both the Rani. Anyway, the Rani sort of docks her cycle, or her rocket cycle, sorry, on board the Bone Palace, right at the very top in the centre, and greets Mrs. Flood. And we see on the wall, there's a massive symbol of Rassilon, Seal of Rassilon, the Time Lord's sort of symbol. And the story that Conrad's been telling all this while is a story about the Doctor and about the Rani and about Time Lord mythology and an ancient secret from the Time Lords. And they're in this sort of control, the Rani and Mrs. Flood are in this kind of control room in the Bone Palace, and there are these weird people with things on their faces plugged in. And again, I'm reminded of Flash Gordon, where we had those people sort of rocking back and forward as they were staring into the vortex. And it seems that these people are kind of, they're recording doubt. They're recording the level of doubt. And that's obviously relevant. Mrs. Flood, it seems, in a little sort of side interlude as she's making a sandwich for Conrad on the Rani's orders, she seems to be getting fed up with taking orders from the Rani because, number one, she is the Rani, and number two, she was there first. Anyway, she takes a sandwich to Conrad, and Conrad says, you know, hey, I haven't seen you for ages. Is it working out there? And Mrs. Flood says, yes, you're doing a very good job. And, you know, she refers to Conrad as the boy who wanted the world to be better. And there's a baby in a cot next to Conrad. And this is the baby that we saw at the opening of the episode from Bavaria in 1865. This is the seventh son of a seventh son of a seventh son. And this baby, it seems, is sustaining the entire world. The baby is always happy and it never cries. And Mrs. Flood and Conrad both agree that the baby is terrifying. Anyway, meanwhile, the Rani adds, she's got the Vindicator now, this thing that the Doctor's been using to take readings to sort of triangulate back to today, May the 24th, and she plugs it into a giant clock and says, we've got a temporal fix now. And the Rani and Mrs. Flood have a little chat and they say, is the trap ready? Mrs. Flood implies, again, you know, with perhaps with a little bit of resentment, that the Rani is her child, having sprung from her loins. And the Rani says, that's disgusting. I think this is clearly leading us up to episode 2, and I'll give my thoughts on that in a sec. Anyway, and they record the Doctor's doubts at being at 30%. And there's a reference that they say, tonight we will find him, the one who is lost, and then the great work will begin. These sort of giant skeletons, meanwhile, are walking around in London still, and they're kind of there but not there. And Ruby and Shirley meet in the street, and Ruby ends up going to a camp of sort of dispossessed people, all of whom are disabled. And it's suggested that because Conrad himself is not disabled, he cannot see people who are disabled. So these people have kind of slipped under this reality, if you like. Shirley says, for example, it makes no sense. You know, she should need loads of medicine. She's not getting the medicine, but she's fine. And they've sort of come to the conclusion that they're all sort of suspended out of time because they all kind of have doubts. They have blue mugs, by the way, so they're not part of this universe. All the people in this sort of spell, if you like, have yellow mugs, and these people who are sort of suspended out of time have blue mugs. And Ruby's kind of like, I've been through 2025 and it's not like this. It shouldn't be like this. And, you know, why is no one here allowed to express doubts? And you can see her having some flashbacks to Conrad. And, you know, the question is, how did Conrad get to be in this position? How is he God, so to speak? Conrad, meanwhile, as I say, in the flashbacks, not in the flashbacks, in the screens that we see, the sort of the cutaways to this story that he's telling, is talking about an ancient Time Lord secret. And the Doctor gets a vision from a man who we saw in an episode last season. I'm going to be honest, I should have looked up his name, and I should have looked up the name of the episode. I've forgotten. That's on me. But it's a character that we met in the last series that the Doctor was quite attracted to. And this sort of man says, look, I'm not going to be able to give you these visions, communicate with you much longer. Just remember this. Tables don't do that. We cut to Belinda in bed on her own, and she hears loads of smashing crockery downstairs. And she goes downstairs, and the Doctor's staring at a sort of pyramid shape, a bit like snooker balls, of these yellow mugs, concentrating really hard. And, you know, as he expresses doubts, the mugs slip through the table and onto the ground. And Belinda says, yeah, that's a slip. That's what happens all the time. And the Doctor's like, tables don't do that. Anyway, Belinda, clearly indoctrinated, picks up a phone call and gets the Doctor arrested. Mrs. Flood turns up as the police inspector and promptly arrests Belinda as well. And meanwhile, outside, we've got Ruby and Shirley. They've kind of positioned themselves under this central spire from this the Bone Palace. And they've managed to get a hold of an iPad or a tablet of some kind, which they say is a relic from another world. And it's running sort of unit software. And it allows them to pinpoint exactly where in the Bone Palace Conrad is sort of broadcasting from. Talking of the Bone Palace, the Doctor and Belinda are now taken up to the Bone Palace, and they are told to step through some kind of invisible threshold, like a force field, if you like, which I imagine is some kind of protective barrier for this world, or some sort of reality shield or something. And the Doctor meets the Rani, who is very keen that the Doctor remembers. And the Doctor says, look, my name's John Smith, I've got a child. And the Rani says to Belinda and the Doctor, you don't have a child. And, you know, your reality is false kind of thing, which, you know, our heroes don't accept. The Rani has a sonic screwdriver of her own with a sort of very nice kind of ceramic, kind of almost bone design again. And she says it's 9 minutes to May the 24th. And she takes the Doctor for a little dance, and they have there's some flashbacks, and the two Ranis introduce themselves as the Rani, and they say that you've stirred up the gods, the pantheon of gods, and they take the Doctor to meet Conrad, and it turns out the child, the seventh son of the seventh son of the seventh son, is a god from the pantheon called Desiderium. I may have misspelt that or misread that. The god of wishes. And basically, Conrad, using the power of this god, has created the world. And they are living in this, as we already suspected, they're living in this fantasy world. But the Rani says we need one more thing. And she kind of boasts to the Doctor that she has boosted, using the Doctor's Vindicator and with all the readings that he's been taking throughout this series, she's boosted the powers of the god that's done all this wishing power, and she's created a web of power to amplify the wishes of a god. And she's saying there's only one problem with our world, and it's full of doubts. But the doubts are the whole point. And the whole palace starts to sort of shake. And she says that she reveals that she needed the Doctor trapped inside the wish. And in quite a funny line, she says, and this isn't just exposition, I do need to tell you everything, because basically she wants the Doctor's doubts to become all-consuming, because the Doctor, with the mind and power of a Time Lord's doubts, with this boosted power, can rip open reality, and elements of London start to sink into the ground. And the Rani says, because she wants to see the underverse, she wants to see what's beneath the universe, she wants to find the one who is lost. And this is where everything kind of comes together, and we kind of finally reveal why Conrad has been banging on about Time Lord secrets and everything. They are trying to find Omega. Now, Omega was first introduced in the 1973 Doctor Who story, The Three Doctors, and Omega was a Gallifreyan stellar engineer who created a device called the Hand of Omega, which would basically capture the full power of a supernova. Essentially, Omega is the one who kind of created the Time Lords, if you like, and created the ability for Gallifreyans to travel in time and to become the Time Lords. But in doing so, he was trapped in an antimatter universe and he could never return to our universe. And he's made a few attempts to come back within Doctor Who. And he is a quite terrifying figure. Because, as I say, he created the Time Lords. He's the first Time Lord, probably even more powerful than Rassilon, who was for a while president, leader of the Time Lords. Anyway, we hear Omega's voice as Omega is kind of released, because now the Rani can see beneath reality and can free Omega. And the Doctor now fully remembers who he is. We see flashbacks through all the different Doctors through Doctor Who history, and he's now trapped outside, and the Rani kind of cuts off the balcony that he's on, and the Doctor begins to plummet to the ground. And as he's plummeting to the ground, we see elements of London sinking into the floor and the planet sort of breaking up, and the Doctor says, "But my daughter Poppy is real, don't you know what that means?" And we crash into the closing credits. So, for the second year in a row, we have a villain from Doctor Who's history, a very powerful villain from Doctor Who's history, being introduced as this season's big bad. This is, of course, Omega. We haven't seen him yet. We've heard his voice. I'd be interested to know what the design of Omega looks like this time round, because he's had a couple of different designs. Again, I never saw this coming. I do have a hope. So we've had the Doctor, the Master, and now the Rani, and we've also had visions of Susan, who we didn't see in this episode, the Doctor's granddaughter. And I'm wondering whether we're finally getting a proper return of Gallifrey into our universe, and maybe they'll cut out all that crap with the cyber Time Lords, which I didn't like, because that was a bit of a dead end, in my opinion, that kind of story. I don't mind the Timeless Child stuff, but the Cybermen taking over the Gallifrey, yeah, I wasn't too keen on that. But maybe I don't know what's going to happen, if I'm honest with you. It's obviously a continuation of this, Pantheon of the Gods thing. What's the thing that I said I was going to come back to? I've probably forgotten to do that now. Bear with me one sec. I've just got to look through my notes. Oh, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Anyway, yeah, so as I say, Omega, a very powerful person in the Doctor Who sort of universe, much like kind of Sutekh was. I'm kind of hoping, though, that we're going to get over this Pantheon of Gods thing, because I'm starting to think it's getting a bit overused. And every time we get a new god introduced, it's kind of like, yes, this is the most powerful one of all. Well, they can't all be the most powerful one of all. It's like when my wife asks me to put things into the freezer, right? She'll say, can I have that near the top? Yes, no problem. Can I have this near the top? Okay. Can I have this near the top? No, not everything can be near the top. It doesn't hover in space. Some stuff logically has to go near the bottom, right? And that's just me banging on about my freezer. But here we are. Not all of these gods that are introduced can be the most powerful god leader of them all, so yeah, there we go. Yes, this is the one thing I was going to say. I think there's clearly a schism between the two Ranis. Mrs. Flood, who was there in the first place, is clearly fed up with taking orders from the Rani. And I do think that's possibly going to lead to the resolution in episode 2. I quite liked the set of the Bone Palace. It was very nicely done with the huge seal of Rassilon and the sort of bony architecture. But clearly the height of the set wasn't that high, because we didn't really get very many high shots, and I thought maybe more could have been done with that set. But having said that, again, a lot of Disney money on screen when we see chunks of London starting to sort of, sink into the ground. Something that I don't think could have been done on a BBC budget years and years ago. So that was quite good to see. I've got no idea where this secondary plot line with Ruby and Shirley is going to go. Are we going to get the unit people coming back? I don't know. It was interesting that the police logo was just like a crown. Rani, I think, means queen, I believe. So yeah, that was just kind of interesting. I thought Anita Dobson was very good in this episode, sort of relishing the part. And as I say, I do think that the next episode is going to see some kind of argument between the two Ranis, and that's possibly how we're going to help resolve this issue. A funny sort of episode to start with, but lots of questions, but I think it all came to a head nicely. Now the question is, will they be able to stick the landing for the final episode? Now, moving on away from the episode itself, the Sun newspaper, scum that it is, basically has been posting articles about, Ncuti Gatwa being fired or something. I wouldn't honestly listen to what the Sun newspaper has to say. I have heard many rumours, even long before this series, that Ncuti Gatwa was only going to be around for 2 series anyway, and I understand he's getting Hollywood offers, so why would he want to limit himself? It would be a shame, I think, if he only did last 2 series, because I am enjoying Doctor Who at the moment, and also I hope they keep the logo, because the diamond logo is my favourite logo, but that's by the by. I'm liking this incarnation of the Doctor. In fact, there are very few incarnations. There are no incarnations of the Doctor that I don't like. I have a least favourite, but this is not it. And, there's been talking about, Disney weren't very happy with the returns, etc., etc., etc. So, we might end up with another hiatus situation, but I certainly wouldn't listen to what the Sun newspaper says. And I rather suspect if Ncuti Gatwa is to leave Doctor Who, that was probably agreed a long time ago. Because I seem to recall reading somewhere that this series and the last series were pretty much filmed back to back. So they've been in the can for a long time. So we'll just have to wait and see. It's interesting, though, that we've yet to see this Doctor encounter the Daleks. Are we going to have the first incarnation of the Doctor that never meets the Daleks on screen? And if so, that's very interesting. I don't know whether it's good or bad. It's traditional that the Doctor meets the Daleks. I don't think Ncuti Gatwa likes the Daleks, but John Pertwee didn't like the Daleks either, and he still had like the second highest number of stories in Classic Who with the Daleks. So anyway, look, I'm kind of rambling on now. I really wouldn't listen to what newspapers like the Sun say. I'll be honest with you, I haven't bought a newspaper for 30 years. Right, because it's just rich people telling you what to think, really. You could say that I'm trying to tell you what to think, but I'm not rich. Far from it. So, I don't buy newspapers. I don't listen to what rich people want to try and tell me and who to be afraid of and who allegedly is stealing all my money. I know who's stealing all my money. It's the rich people. There you go. So, I wouldn't listen to crap newspapers talking about Ncuti Gatwa getting fired, Doctor Who being too woke, blah, blah, blah. I know there are many people who don't like what they regard as wokeness. Doctor Who's always been progressive, and I've no doubt that I will probably get some people unsubscribing from this for daring to speak an opinion that they don't 100% believe in. That's just tough. I'm never going to get to 500 viewers, so I'm never going to be able to monetize this channel, so I don't care, right? So basically, if you think Doctor Who's too woke, you should really start looking at some stuff from the 1960s. What do you think the Daleks are? They're a reaction against the Nazis, right? So, if you want to call Doctor Who Antifa, then I guess it is, because it's anti-fascist, right? I'm rambling on now. It would be a shame, I think, if Ncuti Gatwa was to leave the series. I think he's very good. But, time moves on, people want to explore different acting opportunities. I suspect if Ncuti Gatwa was to leave, somebody somewhere is going to claim this as a victory for something somewhere. But I just think it would be sad because I'm enjoying him. Anyway, look, I'm going to shut up now because I'm just going off on a tangent. And Monkey here is also getting a bit fed up with me just kind of rambling on. Monkey's been trapped behind my chair for some months now, and I was starting to wonder where he was, and I found him. I found Monkey. There you go. So goodbye from Monkey and me. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Total Ramblings. I'll see you in the next one. Please do all the usual YouTube-y stuff like, subscribe, comment, share, hate me, unsubscribe, etc., etc. Do whatever you like. Bye bye.